Hi everyone! I have a group of OCs, or original characters, that I love and cherish, even though I don't talk about them much online. Their story also isn't anything super crazy, it's just a slice of life type of deal, mostly focusing on the character relationships, platonic or romantic. When I was in middle school, I would constantly make new characters and add them to one big universe. I had like 40 OCs in one universe, and I would draw them constantly. All of my sketchbooks and notebooks were filled with sketches and sometimes colored drawings of these characters interacting, showing off their outfits, or completely new characters I made up on the spot. I have briefly shown them in one of my older videos, but that video is kinda bad, so you won't miss out on anything if you haven't seen it. But despite all the work that I was putting in, there actually wasn't much of a story there, and the characters themselves didn't have much going on. They had one or two character traits, maybe a best friend or partner, and a sexuality, but even my understanding of sexualities was very limited back then. I only knew straight, gay, and bi, and all of the characters were one of those three. Their designs were often based on real people that I either followed online or saw on Pinterest, and I hate that so much now. It's normal to take inspiration from real people for character design, but I would just take a person, draw them in my style, rename them, and call it an OC. I don't know, now I find it weird and also lazy. I'm not a fan of the art style I had either, and to clarify, if you draw in a similar way, I do not care, you do you. I am only talking about my art and how I used to draw. It was this chibi kind of style. I refused to draw feet, and all of the features were very similar. Yeah, not a fan now. However, there is a group of characters in there that started it all and that I care about the most. And now we finally got to the point of this video. Taking inspiration from a few other YouTubers, I decided to revisit my middle school OCs and redesign them, as well as work on their story as a little exercise. I will say straight away, I don't have all of the story details down just yet. I'm more of a character designer, I would say, and making stories for said characters is not my strong suit, but let's finally get to the redesigns. The first character is Bonnie Williams. I'm pretty sure she was the first character I made for this universe. At first her design was not very consistent, I would change her hair all the time, but then at some point I stuck to a light purple bob. I also noticed that there are some character archetypes and design elements that I tend to stick to. Bonnie specifically reminded me of my current character Nicole. The bob, the lip piercing, they're both short and grumpy. It wasn't a fun realization, but I tried to work with that and make Bonnie look different enough without taking away too much from her old design. As for the story, that universe was just a normal world, and all of the characters were just existing, doing their thing. Bonnie was just kind of there. She would hang out with her friends. At some point I tried to give her a boyfriend, but that didn't really stick. For this rewrite, I wanted to spice things up a little bit and maybe add a supernatural element to it. After a lot of brainstorming, I remembered my first attempt at a comic from 2020. I tried to do something with magic and portals, and there you can see old versions of my current characters. It was so jarring to see Oliver be grumpy all the time. There are some ideas that I like, but the execution is not the best, both visually and writing-wise. I did 18 chapters and gave up on it, but I wanted to borrow some ideas from it. The characters will be college students. For the supernatural element, I decided to make Bonnie a witch. She comes from a long line of witches. Most women in her family have magical powers, and they have a special crystal necklace that helps control it. This necklace gets passed from generation to generation along with the powers, and Bonnie has had it since she was 14. She is very, very protective of it. I also wanted to give her a more witchy style. She used to dress in whatever I saw on Instagram, but that didn't fit my new vision, so I went for what I can only describe as Alice Collins style. There's gotta be a specific name for it, but I don't know what it is. Like I said before, Bonnie never really had a romantic relationship that stuck. I decided to double down on that and make her aro ace. She doesn't call herself that or identify that way. She's just not interested in romantic or sexual relationships. She just exists on her own, doing her thing. But it's also a problem because in her family it's a tradition to have a daughter and pass down the powers and necklace to her, but Bonnie doesn't want to have a family and children. Her family always talks about her getting married one day and giving them a baby girl, which causes tension in the household. Bonnie hasn't told any of them and usually just nods along. Deep down, she hopes she'll change her mind someday to not disappoint her family, but understands it most likely won't happen. Personality-wise, she is very distant and kind of off-putting. She's just always in her own world. She's really quiet for real unless she knows you. She just stares at people with her big old blue eyes, kind of creeping them out a little bit.
What'd you say? Sorry. I'm all eyes. I mean ears.
No one really knows what she's thinking about. Her connection to the other characters is that she grew up with Mingu, and he kind of introduced her to the others. She's not very good at making friends on her own. Mingu is the only person that she feels more or less comfortable with, and the others she just tolerates. I haven't really planned out how her magic works yet, so bear with me on that. I definitely want something to happen to the crystal or the magic later in the story. Not sure what yet. Maybe the crystal breaks, or Bonnie starts losing her magic. Who knows? She's already worried about possibly ending her bloodline of witches since she's not interested in creating a family, but then it starts happening on its own for whatever reason. And she has to figure out how to fix things while also hiding this fact from her family. Her friends do their best to help and support her, even though they don't know the full truth. Or do they? But Bonnie is not good at teamwork. She wants things done her way, and it causes a lot of arguments among the characters. That's all I have for now. I think this design turned out really good. You can tell how committed I am based on the fact that I did line art. Yeah, I really like the result, and I had the most story ideas for Bonnie. Next is Samantha Anderson, or Sam. I actually still like her old design, so I didn't change it much, and mostly worked on her story. Originally, her whole story was basically that she had a crush on Bonnie, but it wasn't reciprocated, so Sam just suffered for a while until I gave her a girlfriend. It's not a bad story, but once again, the execution was not the best because I lacked experience. Sam would just kind of flirt with Bonnie, and Bonnie would be like, It's very lackluster to me now. Sam is part of the student council and is very passionate about it. She always participates in organizing events, the events themselves, and the teachers really love her. She is also 2 years older than Bonnie and Mingu, about 21 to be exact. Her connection to other characters is she is already friends with some of them and gets introduced to others over time. I'm good at storytelling. Sam is very friendly and outgoing, but takes her job very seriously and she's very particular about how things are done. I still wanted to keep Sam's crush on Bonnie, but now she's not gonna just flirt with her all the time despite being rejected. She does flirt with her at first, but when it's clear that Bonnie is not interested, she backs off. It's also not gonna be instant. Maybe Sam sees Bonnie hanging out in the emptier parts of the building, like the library, on her own, and decides to hang out with her to cheer her up, even though Bonnie is not sad and actually prefers the quiet. They start hanging out like that more and more. Slowly, Bonnie opens up a little bit, and Sam catches feelings, ooh. But after she gets rejected, those romantic feelings slowly change into more maternal feelings, and she just wants to take care of her friend and make sure she's okay. Sam will also play a big part in trying to fix Bonnie's magic, but she doesn't know the full truth. Or does she? Yeah, I don't have much else in terms of plot. I think this design turned out really well. I really like the feather tattoos the original design had, and honestly, just overall, I didn't change her much. It's just in a new, more detailed style. Middle school me kinda cooked with this design just a little bit. Next character is Mingu Kim. At that time, I was a huge K-pop fan, so of course I had to make a Korean character and steal a name from a K-pop idol. He was also one of my favorite characters and I would draw him a lot. However, looking at those drawings now, I guess I couldn't really decide on the aesthetic for him. On one hand, his hair is colorful and he has a very bubbly personality, but on the other hand, he has an eyebrow slit and a whole neck tattoo. His outfits also constantly jumped between cute and edgy. I mean, you can do both, of course, but for me it's just really clashing, so for the new design I stuck to a cuter aesthetic. I also got rid of the eyebrow slit and neck tattoo and replaced it with a birthmark. I realized I've never done birthmarks in my art, so why not? Mingu and Bonnie basically grew up together. As they were growing up, their families were constantly putting them together, but unfortunately for them, Mingu is gay. Though he hasn't been very lucky when it comes to finding love. As a young teen, he was obsessed with romance comics and books and wanted to have something like that so badly. For a long time, it was one of his biggest insecurities, but at some point he got over it and decided to stop chasing a relationship. If it happens, it happens. And oh boy, does it happen. He is also part of the student council, specifically the art department. He makes props and decorations whenever there's an event at their college. He is close with Sam and other character Daisy that I'll get to in a bit, and he introduces Bonnie to them at some point to kind of get Bonnie to socialize a little bit. He doesn't know about Bonnie's powers. Or does he? No, he doesn't. He's genuinely oblivious. He's just having a good time with his friends. One day, while he's in a student council room working on a poster, a tall, jock-looking guy walks in, shoots him a glance, and walks towards Sam to talk about an upcoming basketball tournament or whatever. Doesn't matter. What matters is Mingu thinks that guy seems rude. So he just goes back to his work. But then that guy keeps coming in again and again and again. And while Mingu is not the type to listen to other people's conversations, he noticed that every day that guy's question and request would go from important, like about upcoming tournaments, to pretty small stuff like where a specific room is or something. Then one time, Sam is absent, Mingu is the only one in the room, and like clockwork, that guy walks in again. And that's all I'm giving you right now. We'll catch up to that in a bit, but now I want to talk about the design. I like it a lot more now. I kept his moles and blue hair. I would often give him pink ends as well, but that's too much for me. I love the birthmark. I love his face. I love him. He's just a cutie patootie. The next character is Daniel Jones, or Dan. His original design is okay. I kept most of it for the redesign. I made him mostly just as a boyfriend for Mingu. I don't think I ever added how they met or anything like that. Dan just appeared and now they are in love. He didn't have much of a personality either besides being a boyfriend, so I really wanted to make him more of a character. He is the captain of a basketball team and is very popular in their college. He is also about 20 years old. His connections to other characters is he already kind of knows Sam, used to be friends with Daisy, and meets the others later in the story. He falls into another character archetype that I do a lot, gentle giant, but I'm not ashamed of that. Gentle giants are awesome. Dan is gonna be very tall and fit, kind of a gym rat honestly. He plays basketball and works out in his free time. Most people find him intimidating, even his teammates, but he's actually a very sensitive soul and kind of a hopeless romantic. However, he doesn't show it around most people. His parents put a lot of expectations on him since he was little, and over time he developed this mask of being nonchalant and kind of scary. I also made a twin brother for him, Ben. Yes, Dan and Ben. Genius, I know. I wanted to play around with that too. So far, all I have is that as a young teen, Ben passed away in a weird accident or something like that. I'm not sure about the details yet though. And that also contributed to Dan's behavior. There is a basketball tournament coming up, and Dan's team needs to prepare stuff like uniforms and posters for it. So he goes to the student council room. When he walks in, he immediately notices a blue-haired guy working on something. He is so focused that it seems like he didn't even hear anybody come in. Oh, but he actually did. Sam immediately swoops Dan away to talk about the tournament, but he can't stop thinking about the blue-haired guy. He felt curious, fascinated. Even he isn't sure. He kept coming back to that room every day, shooting quick glances at the guy. One time he was working on a set design for an upcoming play, next day he was doing his homework, then he was having lunch, and every time Dan would shoot quick glances at him, taking in a new detail of his appearance. First his hair, then his moles, the birthmark on his neck, but he could never get a good look of his face. That guy was always focused on what he was doing, never even lifting his head. Soon Dan started running out of valid reasons to go to that room, so he started looking for new, way less important ones, just to get another look at that guy. But one day when he comes into that room again, there's no one there besides him, the blue-haired guy. He finally looks back at him, face fully visible. His expression was so soft that Dan froze for a second. Hee hee hee. From there, they have an awkward conversation. Dan keeps scrambling for words, but barely anything comes out. Earlier he had an excuse for coming here, but it all just flew out of his brain. Then he notices some poster drafts that guy has been working on, including one for their basketball team. Dan latches onto that and moves the conversation in that direction, asking questions, some of them kinda dumb, like, you drew that by hand? But it definitely works, as the blue-haired guy seems to warm up and the awkwardness slowly goes away. That gives Dan the courage to invite the guy to their game. The guy thinks for a little bit, then agrees. Dan nods and is about to leave without even asking for the guy's name, until he stops him and says, "My name is Mingu, by the way." And Dan responds by introducing himself too, but Mingu just answers, "I know." Ah! Okay, that was a lot, but I have a little bit more, just bear with me. I imagined that over time Mingu and Dan would get closer and closer, Dan's more sensitive and romantic side would start showing through, and they will get together at some point. I forgot to mention that Dan is bi. He knows that, but he's only dated girls before this, so there's gonna be this inner conflict of him genuinely caring for Mingu, but also this pressure from the outside, be it his family or quote-unquote friends. And that's still not all. Later, Mingu introduces Dan to his friends, some of which he knew before, but he recognizes Bonnie's crystal necklace. Ooh, what's up with that? Well, the twist is that Dan comes from a family of witch hunters. Dun dun dun! Yup. Generations ago, witches almost ended his bloodline, and since then his family has been hunting witches down, as they believe they are all evil and don't deserve to live. However, it's been decades since the last witch encounter. Until now. Yeah. I definitely want Dan and Bonnie to strike up some kind of deal, even though hunters are trained to not hesitate and put all their emotions aside when it comes to witches. But Bonnie is Mingu's friend, and if Dan hurts Bonnie, he hurts Mingu, and he really doesn't want that. So he makes an offer. He lets Bonnie live, and she stays away from Mingu. Or something like that. I'm not sure yet. I just know I want them to be kind of forced to be around each other a lot without killing each other and revealing their secret. Spooky. That was a lot. Remember when I said I had the most story ideas for Bonnie? Well, I lied. But let's talk about the new design. It's okay, it's definitely the vibe that I was going for, but I will probably change his clothes later down the line. He also looks older than his age, I think, and if you put him and Mingu together, it's dangerously close to looking like a yaoi stereotype. But I promise, they don't act like that. Mingu still has a bubbly personality, but he is capable and he doesn't act like a child. And Dan is not some alpha wolf, he's actually kind of a himbo. Also, I had some trouble with this drawing in particular. I was working on these in between my commissions, so I had to draw in stages, basically. And at some point while I was drawing, I accidentally turned my laptop off, and the drawing glitched out. Luckily I was able to restore it, but then I discovered that all of my saved brushes disappeared. Not cool. Okay, moving on to the next character. The last character for today is Daisy Brown. I was originally going to change her name because it felt a little weird, I guess, but when I googled African American surnames, I saw this, so I'll leave it for now. Moving on, Daisy's original design is my least favorite from this video. It's just so boring, she doesn't have any standout features or even a fashion style unique to her. I just wanted to make a black character, but didn't do much with it. She was also supposed to be plus size, but most drawings of her don't look like it. I was trying, at least. This is why you use references and study instead of brute forcing through it. Also, this is another archetype that I do a lot. A short, black, plus-size girl with a bubbly personality. Yeah. So I decided to change her design drastically, probably the most out of all characters. I really wanted to add a goth character to the mix, and Daisy seemed like a great option. I gave her new hair, new makeup, she wears a red eye contact because why the heck not? Speaking of which, I recently changed the way I color eyes, just a little bit. I started outlining the pupils with red because it looks cool, and with Daisy in particular, I outlined her red eye with her real eye color, and it coincidentally looks both like how real contacts look, and still fits in my style. It's a small thing, but I felt very smart when I did that. Her personality will change a lot as well. Originally, she was just another bubbly character, and over time, I kind of stopped drawing her and she became more of a background character, which sucks because she's one of the OGs. I'm pretty sure she was the third character I made for this universe. Her new role in the story is that she's a photographer. Kind of. She always carries a camera with her, taking pictures of anything she finds cool looking, though sometimes she can be kind of inconsiderate with it. A lot of the time she doesn't ask for permission, just takes a picture, trying to capture the raw moment or whatever. She's not officially part of the student council, but she often does photography for them. She's in the same class with Mingu, so they very quickly became friends. He would ask her for help with pictures, and over time it became a normal thing for them. Daisy also used to be friends with Dan and his twin brother Ben. They were very close as children and young teens, until the accident. It was so sudden and weird that even to this day no one really knows what truly happened. From the grief, Dan and Daisy became more and more distant, to the point that now they don't even acknowledge each other anymore. Before I move on to the rest of the story, I want to talk about the new design. I love it so much more now. I'm so much better at drawing black and plus size people now, and finally she looks like how she did in my head. It's still crazy to me that I looked at this and thought, yeah, that's plus size. Now, I went over the character relationships, but what is the main story about? After all the characters meet and are aware of each other, something weird starts going on. A lot of the students suddenly become sick. The symptoms are close to a light fever, so no one thinks it's that big of a deal. While Daisy was walking around the building, looking for a cool new shot, she stumbles across the library. Around the corner, she sees Bonnie. The combination of old dusty shelves that no one looks after, the dimmed lights, and Bonnie's focused face looked great to Daisy, so she quickly snaps a picture. But last second, Bonnie turned her face, looking straight into the lens with her striking blue eyes, almost like she sensed someone was there. Daisy apologizes for startling her, and when she looks at the final picture, she notices something strange. Around Bonnie there was what looked like a cloud of dust. Vaguely human-shaped cloud of dust. Maybe it's the dusty shelves, or she didn't clean the lens properly, or the lens is just scratched. Either way, it's a really cool shot, one of Daisy's favorites now. But this keeps happening. No matter how much Daisy cleaned and changed out her lenses, the dusty clouds were always in her pictures. It looked cool, but didn't make sense. Especially when there were people there, the clouds would wrap around them or take a weirdly human shape, standing above. She becomes concerned and goes to the smartest person she knows, Sam. But Sam is just as confused. Then one day, an accident happens. One of the students just collapsed out of nowhere, and when checking for pulse, there wasn't any. That person was fine just a moment ago, and now they are gone. That shakes up everyone. Suddenly the fever becomes a lot more serious of an issue. This reminded Dan of something else. The accident. Ben also was doing perfectly fine right before his passing, then just collapsed. There were no warning signs, no serious symptoms, so Dan decides to look into this more. Mingu goes along to help, so do the rest of the characters, but Bonnie also has to solve her magic problem along the way, and they try to solve this mystery together, each with their own motive, but together. And that's the premise. I like to imagine the characters clashing with each other, but being almost forced to work as a team. Dan and Bonnie are very aware of each other's motives, but can't do anything about it. But maybe, just maybe, over time their views on witches and hunters change. At that same time, Dan and Daisy try to stay cool with their very strained friendship. They both remember what happened to Ben very well and want to solve this to get some sort of closure. Maybe what's currently happening has something to do with it. Maybe it can fix their friendship. Samantha really wants to figure this out because she genuinely cares about the well-being of others, but she keeps bumping heads with Bonnie, who is very stubborn, and Daisy, who under pressure gets really irritable and lashes out. And Mingu is pretty much the glue that holds the group together. I imagine maybe at some point more characters find out about Bonnie's magic, or one of them gets sick and that adds more pressure to solve the mystery. But this is all I have for now. Like I said, I'm not very good at making interesting stories. This one took a lot of my brain power and gave me many migraines. I also kind of feel silly when talking about my characters out loud for some reason. But I hope you enjoyed this nonetheless. If you have more ideas or suggestions, feel free to share them in the comments, it will be greatly appreciated, and if I ever do a part 2, I might add your ideas to the story. I am very confident about the new designs though. It was very fun to revisit these characters that used to be very dear to me and give them a new life. This video was definitely a challenge for me, but it's cool. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that. Check out my other socials, they will be on the screen and in the description. Stay safe, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!